A man's arm snaps clean in half on a hunt. No hospital. No cast. No painkillers, besides gritting his teeth through the worst of it. 6 weeks later, the bone is fused. He's using that arm again like nothing happened. We know this because his skeleton is still here, dug up in France, 7,000 years old, the break healed clean. And that raises an uncomfortable question. For 300,000 years, humans had no antibiotics, no painkillers, and no idea germs even existed. So how did most of them make it to adulthood anyway? The answer isn't luck. It's a system, and by the end of this video, that system includes a form of surgery with a lower infection rate than a hospital in the 1840s. By the end, you'll see why parts of that ancient system were smarter than anything you'd expect. Here's where most people get it wrong. We picture ancient humans as us, just without the tools. Cavemen quietly wishing someone would invent ibuprofen. That picture is backwards. They weren't waiting around for medicine. They were running the largest experiment in human history. No lab. No control group. No ethics board. Just, try something. Watch what happens. And if it works, tell your children. That's the exact same method science uses today. Just slower. And with a much higher body count. The results of that experiment? They're still sitting in your medicine cabinet right now. A cave in northern Iraq called Shanidar. Inside, a Neanderthal burial. And packed into the soil around the body, a strange concentration of pollen. Not from one plant. From several. Yarrow. Groundsel. Plants that don't just wander into a cave by accident. Someone placed them there deliberately, and when scientists tested those exact plants thousands of years later, several turned out to contain real, measurable medicinal compounds. Read that again. A species that went extinct 40,000 years ago may have understood plant medicine before our own species even arrived. Once modern humans do arrive, the knowledge explodes. Willow bark contains salicin, the same molecule aspirin is built from today. Egyptians, Greeks, and Chinese healers all reached for it independently. So did indigenous groups across North America, none of whom ever met or compared notes. Pain doesn't care what continent you're standing on. And apparently, neither does the cure. Garlic was used by the Egyptians as an antimicrobial. Modern labs have confirmed it really does fight certain bacteria. Turmeric has been central to Ayurvedic medicine for thousands of years. Its main compound has documented anti-inflammatory effects. This isn't folklore that got lucky. It's trial-and-error pharmacology that landed on the right chemistry, centuries before anyone even had the word compound. Before antiseptics existed, a small cut wasn't small. A dirty wound could kill you within a week, so ancient people found fixes that still hold up under a microscope today. First, honey. Egyptian medical texts describe packing wounds with it. It turns out honey is naturally hostile to bacteria. Low moisture. High acidity. And it slowly releases a trace of hydrogen peroxide. Hospitals still use a medical-grade version today, called Manuka honey, in serious wound care. Second, and stay with me on this one. Maggots. Fly larvae placed deliberately on infected wounds. It sounds like a horror movie. It's actually incredibly precise. Maggots eat only dead, infected tissue. They leave healthy tissue alone. Cultures on separate continents, with no contact, noticed this independently. Maggot therapy is still used in hospitals today for infections that won't respond to antibiotics. Third, spider silk. Pressed onto cuts by the Greeks, the Celts, and various indigenous groups to stop bleeding. It contains compounds that help blood clot. Researchers today are studying it as a wound-closing material. No microscopes. No germ theory. Just time. Attention. And the discipline to remember what actually worked. Trepanation, cutting or scraping a hole directly into the skull, appears in the archaeological record more than 9,000 years ago. And here's the detail that changes everything. Many of those skulls show smooth, healed bone around the opening. That means the patient didn't die on the table. They lived long enough for the bone to remodel itself. Some skulls even show the procedure performed more than once, on the same person. Years apart. We don't know the full reason. It was probably a mix of treating head trauma, relieving pressure from fractures, managing seizures, and likely some spiritual belief tangled in with all of it. For most ancient cultures, medicine and ritual weren't separate categories. But here's the twist that should genuinely surprise you. Trepanation performed outdoors with clean stone tools may have carried a lower infection risk than surgery inside a European hospital in the 1840s. Hospitals back then were so unsanitary that surgery sometimes killed more people than staying home would have. It wasn't until the 1860s, with Joseph Lister, that doctors started reliably washing their hands before operating. A Stone Age surgeon with a sharpened rock may have given you better odds than a fully trained physician 6,000 years later. Progress isn't always a straight line. Hold on to that thought. It's coming back at the end. And it's not only skulls. There's a healed forearm amputation on record from ancient France. Which means someone kept that patient alive afterward. They fed them. Kept the wound clean. And nursed them through the worst of it. Surgery alone doesn't save you. Aftercare does. And they had it. The biggest reason ancient humans survived wasn't only what they did on purpose. It was what evolution had already built into them without asking. Every generation exposed to a pathogen and surviving passed slightly better defenses to the next. Multiply that across tens of thousands of years, and you get an immune system quietly shaped by everything that tried to kill your ancestors, and failed. This explains one of history's darkest turning points. When Europeans arrived in the Americas, the devastation that followed, wiping out an estimated 90% of some populations, had nothing to do with physical superiority. Europeans were carrying diseases like smallpox and measles that their own populations had been surviving for centuries. Indigenous Americans had never been exposed. They had no inherited defense to fall back on. It remains one of history's clearest, and most brutal, examples of immunity working like inherited memory. Not every defense was inherited. Some were built every day, at the dinner table. There's a quieter defense too, sitting in the gut. Ancient humans ate an enormous variety of wild plants, animal foods, and fermented foods, which constantly fed the trillions of microbes living inside them. Those microbes train your immune system, compete with harmful bacteria, produce vitamins, and even influence inflammation. Modern diets contain a fraction of that diversity. Our microbiomes have become less diverse too. Scientists are now trying to restore what ancient lifestyles built naturally. Not by going back to caves, but by understanding what those lifestyles accidentally got right. The strangest part is this. Ancient humans didn't know why many of these treatments worked. They only knew that they did. And measurable. Expecting to get better can genuinely change pain levels, immune activity, and recovery speed. Even in people who know they're taking a placebo. Ancient healers never had that vocabulary. But they were clearly using the effect anyway. A community gathering around someone who's sick. A healer performing a confident, deliberate ritual. Strip away the supernatural framing, and what's left is a real signal reaching the patient's brain. You are not alone. And something is being done for you. That signal alone can lower stress hormones, shift immune activity, and, in documented cases, genuinely speed recovery. Modern medicine has quietly caught up to this. Bedside manner and social support are now proven to measurably affect patient outcomes, including survival rates in serious illness. None of this means ancient medicine equaled modern medicine. It didn't. And it's worth being honest about that. A ruptured appendix, fixed today with a routine hour-long surgery, was almost always fatal. Childbirth carried real, constant risk. An infected tooth could turn deadly if it spread to the jaw. In many ancient populations, somewhere between 1/4 and 1/2 of children didn't survive to adulthood. Archaeologists have opened burial sites where a single grave holds a child alongside carved toys and beads placed by hand. The same grief, the same instinct to send someone off with what they loved. Thousands of years before anyone wrote it down. That's the real weight behind the number. It's why average life expectancy from that era looks so low, often quoted around 30 to 35 years. But that number hides something important. It's dragged down almost entirely by childhood deaths. If you survived childhood, and avoided violence or death in childbirth, living into your 50s, 60s, or even 70s wasn't unusual at all. Archaeologists have found skeletons showing decades of life with severe arthritis, healed fractures, and major injuries. People who simply lived with these conditions for another 30 or 40 years. And here's the part worth sitting with. Malaria. Tuberculosis. Cholera. Diarrheal disease in children. The same diseases that killed people in the ancient world still kill people today, in places without access to modern medicine. This isn't ancient history. For hundreds of millions of people alive right now, it's still the present. So here's the honest answer to the question this whole video was built around. Ancient humans didn't survive without medicine. They survived on a version of medicine we've mostly stopped noticing. Plants that actually worked. Wound treatments modern hospitals still quietly borrow from. Immune systems shaped by everything their ancestors outlasted. And a form of care that understood, long before neuroscience proved it, that a person surrounded by people fighting for them tends to heal faster. We have MRI machines now. Gene therapy. Organ transplants. Things that would look like sorcery to anyone alive before 1850. That progress is real. And it's worth being amazed by. But remember that Stone Age surgeon with the sharpened rock, the one who may have given you better odds than a fully trained physician 6,000 years later. That's the whole point. The foundation underneath all our progress hasn't moved. Eat a real variety of food. Stay closely connected to other people. Move. Rest. Pay attention to your own body. That was the advice 10,000 years ago, around a fire. It's still the advice your doctor gives you today. Just with better delivery. The tools changed completely. The person receiving them didn't change at all. And if you're healthy enough to be sitting here watching this right now, that's not an accident. That's every one of those bets, made over 300,000 years, finally paying off in you. The more you look into history, the more you realize that the world around us is built on stories most people never hear. If you'd like to keep exploring them, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.